Perfection is a trap, the secret to imperfect joy. Hey there, mind explorers. Welcome to our space. Today we're doing something different. We're going to embark on a descent, a journey through 5 increasingly deeper levels of understanding to unravel a mystery that affects us all. We're talking about joy, but not just any joy. We're talking about a secret joy, one that hides in the very place we've been taught to fear, imperfection. We're going to explore why our obsession with being perfect might, ironically, be the biggest barrier to our happiness. Why spend so much time on this? Because it's not just a pretty calendar quote. This idea has deep roots in our biology, our history, and the way our brains are wired, and understanding it changes everything. I promise you this, if you stick with me until the end of this journey, the way you see your mistakes, your failures, and those messy parts of your life will be transformed forever. Let's begin our descent. Level 1, the surface of the known. The first thing that comes to mind when we talk about beauty and imperfection is probably a Japanese concept. It's called Wabi-Sabi. In essence, it's the idea of finding beauty in things that are imperfect, modest, and impermanent. Think of a ceramic teacup that cracked and was repaired. To Wabi-Sabi, that crack isn't a flaw. It's part of its story, making it unique and even more valuable. Another very popular aspect today is the idea of vulnerability, thanks to researchers like Brené Brown. Vulnerability is essentially the courage to show up as we are, with our doubts and insecurities, instead of pretending to be invincible. In our daily lives, the struggle against imperfection manifests as that paralyzing fear of making a mistake at work, or that tendency to postpone a personal project again and again, waiting for the perfect moment to start. A relatable example, the difference between a brand new, stiff, perfect sweater and your old favorite one. The one with the little fuzzballs stretched out a bit, but that gives you a feeling of home and comfort the new one can't match. That's the comfort in imperfection. And of course, there's modern cultural pressure, especially with social media, where it seems everyone is living a perfect life with perfect trips, perfect bodies, and perfect relationships. An illusion of perfection has been created that's impossible to sustain. But where does this obsession come from? Its origin is in part evolutionary. For thousands of years, perfection and symmetry were signals of safety. Imperfection, on the other hand, could be a sign of danger. Imagine our ancestors on the savannah. A fruit with perfect shape and color was likely safe to eat. One with strange spots or an irregular shape could be rotten or poisoned. Our brains developed a bias, a preference for the ordered and predictable as a shortcut for survival. So this is what we see on the surface: an appreciation for concepts like Wabi-Sabi, a fear of making mistakes, and immense social pressure. It's the tip of the iceberg. But if this is what we see on the surface, what secret forces are driving it underneath? Level 2, the hidden mechanisms. Here's the first big revelation. Are you familiar with the Dunning-Kruger effect, where incompetent people overestimate their ability? Well, what's interesting is its opposite. True experts tend to be much more aware of their knowledge gaps, of their imperfections. This means that feeling of doubt, that maybe I'm not good enough, far from being a sign of failure, is often a mark of true understanding. Feeling a bit imperfect in what you do can be a sign that you're growing, that your competence is increasing. And here's the practical application, the opportunity. When you feel that doubt, that imposter syndrome, instead of letting it paralyze you, you can reinterpret it. You can see it as a sign that you're at the edge of your knowledge, and that's precisely where true learning happens. A scientist who, after a successful result, continues to question their own method is more likely to discover a deeper truth than one who accepts the first perfect result without hesitation. That doubt is their driving force. Now for the risk. The danger is confusing the overconfidence and lack of nuance of a novice with true expertise. If we don't understand that doubt accompanies the expert, we become vulnerable to charlatans. Think of the typical social media financial guru who promises you guaranteed massive returns with no risk. Compare that to a professional investor who will constantly talk about market volatility, risks, and uncertainty. Who do you trust more? Now let's talk about an invisible rule that governs our biology, homeostasis. Homeostasis is the principle by which our bodies seek a constant dynamic equilibrium. It doesn't seek a perfect and static state. Your body temperature, your sugar levels, everything fluctuates with small errors that the body constantly corrects. A perfectly static state without these fluctuations would be death. The perfect example is learning to ride a bicycle. You don't find a perfect point of balance and stay there. The act of balancing is a constant almost falling. You lean a bit to the left and correct, a bit to the right and correct. That imperfect wobble is the balance. Let's talk about the structure of our brain. Nobel laureate and psychologist Daniel Kahneman speaks of 2 systems, one fast, intuitive, and emotional, and another slow, analytical, and rational. This connects to a curious cognitive bias, a kind of glitch in our perception called the spotlight effect. This bias is the belief that our errors and flaws are far more noticeable to others than they actually are. Our fast egocentric brain system assumes that the intense shame we feel internally is just as intense for those who see us. But it's a massive miscalculation. To counteract this, there's a very powerful mental strategy, the 10-10-10 rule. When you make a mistake that mortifies you, force yourself to ask, will this matter in 10 minutes? In 10 months? And in 10 years? The moment you feel that spotlight of shame on you, make a conscious effort to activate that question. It's a way to use your slow, rational brain to calm the panic of the fast brain. There's an ancient Japanese custom that masterfully illustrates all of this, the art of Kintsugi. Kintsugi involves repairing broken ceramic objects by filling the cracks with gold. The philosophy behind it is that the breaks and repairs are part of the object's history. Not only are they not hidden, but they are highlighted, making the object more beautiful and stronger than before. Our scars are our veins of gold. From all of this, we can extract a key takeaway for life. The pursuit of perfection is the pursuit of a final static state in a universe that is fundamentally dynamic and ever-changing. Therefore, the general rule for life isn't to avoid breaking. It's to become incredibly good at repairing yourself. There are things that not only survive blows but become stronger and better because of them. In real life, this means that instead of running from mistakes, we should see them as valuable information. Every crack in our plan is an opportunity to rebuild with gold, to learn, and to become more resilient. Understanding these mechanisms changes everything. Doubt, wobbling, cracks, suddenly they stop being signs that something is wrong and become signs that we are alive and actively growing. But if you thought we had it all figured out, get ready, because here the story turns into true chaos. Level 3, the chaos of reality. Let's dive into the first major controversy, the debate over our authentic self versus our edited self, especially in the digital world. On one hand, there are those who argue that showing only the perfect moments of our lives is a form of deception that harms collective mental health. On the other, there are those who defend everyone's right to present the version of themselves they wish as a form of personal expression. What's at stake here is a fundamental conflict between social responsibility for the well-being of others and individual freedom to control our own narrative. Now, let's challenge a very popular belief, the idea that being vulnerable is always and in every circumstance a good thing. The myth we need to debunk is that vulnerability means telling everyone everything. That's not vulnerability, that's boundless oversharing that can even be dangerous. True vulnerability, the kind that creates connection, requires a key ingredient, mutual trust. We love the idea of total authenticity because it seems like a shortcut. It promises instant, deep connection without the slow and sometimes difficult work of building real trust with people gradually. And here we find a painful paradox, the self-help paradox. The very act of trying to fix our imperfections can lead us to obsess even more about them, making us feel worse than when we started. This leaves us with a philosophical dilemma without an easy answer. Do we have a moral obligation to strive to be our best version? Or is there a superior virtue in the radical acceptance of who we are, with all our lights and shadows? Let's take a critical look for a moment at the gigantic personal development industry, which moves billions of dollars a year. The ethical objection we can raise is this. To what extent does this industry profit from our insecurities? Is it selling a cure for a disease it helps to spread by constantly reminding us that we are broken and need to be fixed? And there's another fascinating controversy, this time in education. When raising or teaching a child, what should we praise? Effort, which is an imperfect process full of errors, or the result, the perfect grade? If we look back a few decades ago, the focus was almost entirely on results. However, research like Carol Dweck's on the growth mindset, which is the idea that our abilities can be developed, has brought about a huge shift. Now, the process is valued more, but the debate about the ideal balance is still very much alive. All this yearning for perfection deep down might be connected to the most basic human condition of all, our awareness that we are going to die. The fundamental problem this creates for us as a species is that we know our time is finite, and that our lives, by definition, are imperfect because they have an end. Perhaps all this frantic pursuit of perfection in our careers, our appearance, or our legacy is nothing more than a desperate attempt to distract ourselves from that uncomfortable truth. As you can see, the topic is incredibly complex. The line between healthy growth and toxic perfectionism is very thin, and our own minds often work against us. You've survived the chaos. Now it's time to see the details that separate the curious from the true experts. Level 4, expert knowledge. I want to introduce you to a specialized Italian Renaissance concept that very few people know, sprezzatura. Sprezzatura is the art of making something very difficult appear completely easy and natural. It's a kind of studied nonchalance, a practiced imperfection that hides complete mastery. The best analogy is that of a jazz musician improvising a solo. It sounds spontaneous, free, almost imperfect. But that freedom is born from thousands of hours of rigorous, disciplined practice. The apparent imperfection of the live performance is in reality the pinnacle of their art. Now I want to tell you about a key but often overlooked figure in the history of psychology, the British psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott. Winnicott was a secret hero because he introduced a revolutionary idea, that of the good enough mother. He argued that a perfect mother, one who anticipates every single need of the baby, is actually detrimental. It's the good enough mother who makes small mistakes and allows the child to experience a little frustration, who helps them develop their own identity and resilience. And this leads us to an alternative, almost rebellious theory in psychology, the theory of positive disintegration by Polish psychiatrist Kazimierz Dąbrowski. His completely distinct perspective is that anxiety, internal tension, and the feeling of being broken or imperfect are not necessarily pathologies to be eliminated. For him, they are often the indispensable driving force for deep personal and ethical growth. Internal conflict isn't the obstacle, it's the way. There's a counterintuitive detail found in research on creativity. A study in organizational psychology found that teams working on complex problems generate better ideas when a team member is allowed, and even encouraged, to critique and point out flaws in proposals. This clashes with our intuition because we usually think that harmony and agreement are the keys to group success. But the reality is that for difficult problems, constructive conflict, that acceptance of imperfection in the process, is what generates true breakthroughs. Now let's connect several of the ideas we've seen. Kintsugi, which repairs with gold. The good enough mother, who allows growth through small failures. And positive disintegration, which sees internal conflict as a driving force. All point to the same secret. And here's the aha moment. The goal was never to be an immaculate vase that never breaks. The goal is to become the vase with the most beautiful and strong gold repairs. This level of detail gives us a much more authentic view of the topic. Embracing imperfection isn't a passive act of surrender. It's an active, sophisticated, and tremendously powerful strategy for living a fuller life. From here, we enter uncharted territory. Do you dare to look towards the final frontier? Level 5, the final frontier. Let's think about the future. With the development of artificial intelligence and genetic editing for the first time in history, we will have the tools to design perfection. 100 years from now, what will the world be like? Will we choose to live in a reality optimized by algorithms, where perfect music is composed by AI and genetic editing eliminates all our biological imperfections? Or will we fight to preserve the value of human error, of chance, and of the wonderful messiness of life? And this is where science bumps up against its own limits. Science can measure the efficiency of a process or the symmetry of a face, but will it ever be able to measure the value of a scar or quantify the beauty of a voice broken by emotion? When science can no longer answer, philosophy takes over. And it forces us to ask, what meaning does a life without struggle hold? What is a human being if we remove all their flaws and vulnerabilities? This leads to a dizzying philosophical implication. Perhaps reality itself, at its most fundamental level, is imperfect. Quantum physics, for example, tells us that the universe doesn't operate with predictable certainty, but with probabilities and uncertainty. Perhaps the universe isn't a perfect machine, but an unfinished work of art. And this idea has direct implications for the future of humanity and our greatest challenges. Global problems like climate change or inequality are not puzzles with a single perfect solution. They are complex and chaotic systems. Mastering the art of finding and implementing good enough, adaptable, and imperfect solutions could be the key to our survival as a species. And here's the final idea, the most provocative statement of our journey. Perhaps the purpose of human consciousness isn't to achieve a state of perfect happiness, but to be the means by which the universe experiences the bittersweet beauty of its own imperfections. Think about it for a second. We are not imperfect beings in a perfect cosmos. We are imperfect beings in an imperfect cosmos. And it is precisely in that double imperfection that all the magic lies. And with that thought, our descent through the 5 levels of understanding has concluded. Take a deep breath and for a moment contemplate the full picture. Look at how far we've come. Remember how we started? Talking about that simple, familiar feeling, that almost instinctive fear of making a mistake? Remember that knot in your stomach when you realize there's a flaw in something you've done, in something you are. Now put that feeling in direct contrast with the astonishing idea that the entire universe could be a magnificent, imperfect symphony, and that we are here to listen to its music. We've traveled from the fear of a simple mistake to the contemplation of our cosmic purpose. That's the power of daring to go deeper, of not staying on the surface. What idea from this whole journey impacted you the most? Was it the art of repairing with gold, the concept of the good enough mother, or something else? I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for investing your time and valuable attention on this journey with me. I'd love to read your reflections and your own stories of imperfect joy in the comment section. If this journey has sparked something in you, I invite you to subscribe so you don't miss our next explorations. And if you think someone needs to hear this message, please share the video with them. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and never forget that your greatest strengths might be hidden in your most beautiful flaws. What if your next failure is the start of your masterpiece?